Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of That Creative Life. Today I have my friends, David and Nick. How are you guys doing? Thank you so much for being on. Doing good.
Doing great.
We're doing well.
They're my friends, but fellow interneters, fellow hustlers.
We met through the internet.
How much do you hate?
Through other internet friends is how we met.
Yeah. Well,
we met because there was our mutual friend in LA who I got coffee with.
Yes.
And then
Which was who?
Greg Barrett. Shout out to Greg.
Oh, yeah.
Remember?
Yeah. No, he DM'd me and was like, I have water
we were
to
at
send
coffee.
you.
Greg and I were getting coffee in San Francisco, and your notification popped up and said, SARA DIETSCHY has a new video. And Greg's like, oh, you watch SARA? And I was like, yeah, I've been trying to get in touch with her. She has all this LaCroix branding, and I'm trying to send her some hint water. Yeah. And so Greg's like, oh, I think she follows me on Twitter. I'll DM her. And then he got your address, texted it to me. We sent you a bunch of hint. Then there was like a minute and a half in your next video.
Yeah.
And then I was like, she's the homie.
It was so funny. I love LaCroix so much. And they're the type of people that just don't, I guess, reciprocate. But at the same time, who cares? They can do what they want, right? It doesn't matter if someone with a few followers is like, I love LaCroix. That's not their responsibility. But when another company with similar water, but also having the still water, because I don't want bubbly water all the time. So I liked the still of the hint. So when Hint sent me all this water, it was like, what is this? It was this.
It's good marketing.
It was this new thing. Like, oh my gosh, guys, a company sent me all this stuff for free. So of course I put it in a video.
Yeah.
That's so funny. Yeah.
Yeah. Nick is legitimately one of the best in the world when it comes to direct to consumer.
Yes.
And I really, really, really mean that.
That's so cool. And now
David says
hype up him.
True. I mean, David's literally the smartest guy now. That's how I introduce David. I introduce David to people and say, this is the smartest guy I know. And I actually, funny story with Liz, Liz Eswin.
New York City on Instagram. Yes, she has that Instagram.
Probably, when did we have Andy's rooftop thing with Liz and Sam? Yeah, probably about a year ago. I think that's when it happened, right? Liz asked me like, oh, how do you know David Perell? And I was like, oh, David's literally the smartest guy I know. You can ask him any question. Like, I asked him the other day, I was sitting in traffic. I'm like, damn it, David, why is there so much traffic? It's taking me 70 minutes to get from the airport to VaynerMedia's office. This dude sends me a history lesson of why there's traffic and not a train.
Wow.
Nick,
but anyways,
Nick, your check is in the mail for a couple $1,000. So then, you can work for me whenever you want.
So then Liz says, how do you know David? And I go, oh, David's the smartest guy I know. He's literally my brother, but white. And then Liz asked David separately without us talking and goes, how do you know Nick? And David says, oh, Nick's like my brother, but he's brown.
Yep. It's true.
My brown brother. I love that so much. But that's why, your podcast and your blogs are so great. And something that I always enjoy are these just tweet storms that both of you guys get into. So that's why I'm so excited to sit down on a couch and chat, because I feel like I could just tweet you guys all day. Like, oh, yes, I resonate with that, but what about this? So first thing I want to talk about is, David, something that you've written about, naked brands. Explain to me. What is the naked brand?
Yeah, totally. So last summer, actually it was summer 2016, I was getting brunch with a friend in Soho, and we looked across the street, and there were tents in Soho. There were all these people outside. There were police barricades, and I was like, what's going on there? So I was with my friend Connor, and I said, Connor, let's go across the street. So I'm always doing market research. I think of the world as like a museum for advertising. So like when I step outside, I just start learning about advertising, consumerism. In New
York City, what a better city to be in.
There's no better place. And so I go up to these kids, and I'm like, this was before all this stuff happened, and I'm like, what's going on here? And they're like, it's a Logan Paul pop-up shop. This is the greatest day ever. And I'm like, ooh, this is really interesting. So I'm talking to 6-year-olds, 8-year-olds, 12-year-olds, whatever. And then I go to some of the parents, and I'm like, what's going on here? They're like, it's this dang Logan Paul pop-up shop, this stupid YouTuber. And I'm like, hold on, wait a minute. This is really interesting. You have some kids who are super excited, obviously really influenced by all this. And you have parents who just don't get this. So we start walking, and this block extends for 13 New York City, or this line extends for 13 New York City blocks. So I have this moment where I say, something is going on here. where the power of what's happening on the internet right now is an order of magnitude greater than what people realize. And I always say that digital trends, because you only see metrics, are like these invisible trends. So as a society, we're underestimating the power of these trends. So long story short, I ended up writing a post called Naked Brands, which is basically this idea that, as Nick likes to say so succinctly, people are becoming companies and companies are becoming more like people. So what does that look like? What's happened is that products have become commoditized. If we want to start a product, we can say go to China and make our own product. Marketing has also become really easy. It used to be that you would need a huge ad budget to go on TV and pay for an advertisement. Now you can go on Facebook with $5 and run an ad. So you've had all these things that have gone from being scarce to being abundant. Now, what happens when that occurs is the scarcity always shifts. And so what I've said is like businesses need moats, right? Like that's how you make money, at points of friction. And personality.
Define moat.
Yeah. So moat is basically a business where it's really hard for other people to get into. So if you have a lemonade stand, somebody else can copy that lemonade stand, but say that you own the only diamond business in some place in Africa, you're the only one. No one else can compete with you. And good businesses are built off moats. And so what I discovered was that personality was going to be this sort of like last defining moat. And people are using their personalities to launch brands, distribute them at scale, and go beyond middlemen and basically connect directly with their audiences. And it's a really powerful, but also really beautiful trend that's happening.
And that's exactly why Logan said in his interview with, I think it was 60 Minutes, right after he started YouTube and he just came off of Vine. The interviewer was basically like, you got paid $300,000 for a Dunkin' Donuts campaign on Vine. That is crazy. Yeah. And Logan's response to it was, I should have gotten paid more.
And he's right.
People do not understand the quantity of viewers, listeners who are so about that person that they will literally do anything and everything that they vouch for. Mm-hmm. And I remember that really shaking people up. Yeah. And that was 4 years ago. And now, I mean, he's had his a fair amount of drama recently that has really brought things to kind of a halt. But when he started his vlogs, I mean, it was his merch operation. And, you know, he's saying, I'm going to be the first billionaire social media person, him and his brother. Crazy, right?
And then if you talk to young people, what do they want to be when they grow up? They want to be YouTubers. Mm-hmm. And humans learn through imitation. Mm-hmm. So you basically have this entire generation that's growing up on YouTube and learning from these YouTubers, thinking about who they want to be when they grow up.
And Nick, so you've kind of done the reverse, right? So it's not about people and then selling something from that, whether it's merch or connecting with brands, but you've had experience with taking brands and putting familiar faces to them and really making it more of a personal connection, right? Because sometimes brands and companies can seem kind of scary. They can seem like, oh, how do I relate to a big brand? So tell me a little bit about that and how do you do that? You know, maybe someone out there is literally a CEO of maybe a classic company. They don't know how to get traction with this new wave of, you know, youngsters who are turning to YouTubers and personality for stuff.
What do you say, Nick?
What's up with that, Nick?
So it's like, you know, traditionally, like David said, you needed to have all the ad budgets. Now anybody can run the ad, but it's all about like differentiation. How do you differentiate your brand from another brand? For me, it was, I mean, our relationship sparked from Hint, and it was how do we differentiate Hint from a LaCroix or a...
Hint is water, by the way.
Hint
can
is
be sparkly,
water.
Can be still, flavor water, no sugar.
Yeah. And so for me, it was how do we personify the brand? And, you know, I think one thing that really resonated that I saw after we did the video with you was... We gave you literally no direction. It was just, Sarah, we want you to make a video because you really enjoyed the product at first and the way you conveyed that was really authentic. And so we said, I think Jonathan and I basically said, make a video, and we signed the deal. And then I remember one night being in my bed and I think you had sent the video at probably like 2:30 in the morning your time. And then Jonathan texted me and said, look at the video. And I looked at it and it was like the video that we ran a bunch. And then it was a few Snapchat stories of you and John on the beach drinking hint. And I was like, I think this is a perfect video. And it was because I felt like you were talking to me. And I think YouTubers especially who've at least, and this is kind of the foundation Cycle was built on, was
shout out to Liz at New York City.
If you're so good, you're going to build a following. And if you're so good that you build a following, why not white label that and repurpose it for actual content? And so that's what we started doing with influencers at Hint, was we essentially white labeled influencers and then blew them up at scale.
So explain white label, because people might not understand that.
So traditionally, brands today, most brands, when they work with influencers, will say, hey, John, we want you to talk about our brand in your video for 30 seconds. Here's $5,000 or $10,000 or whatever John's rate is. And we also want an Instagram post. And what happens is the brand is now being promoted to John's audiences on YouTube and Instagram and wherever else they're paying for. What we did was we were able to use data to identify personas. I always laugh when David looks at me like that.
It's like, oh, Nick, I love when you talk
We were
dork.
able to identify audiences and personas that we had a very high probability of converting into customers. And we were able to take your relatable video where, you know, a person really feels like they're connecting to you because you're so good at vlogging, and put that video in front of those people on platforms where it's very native. So we primarily ran it on Facebook video, because on Facebook, as you're scrolling, you're really engaging with friends. And I mean, in 2017, 2018, 2019, people can really see ads a mile away and they'll just scroll right over it.
Yeah. I think that there's a couple things. I just want to distill everything you just said into a couple just key points that Nick and I hit on all the time. The first one is that advertising and entertainment are basically the same thing now. Think about it, when you're watching television, you can't skip a commercial. Now, you totally can. You can just keep scrolling, right? So advertising has to be entertaining. And because of that, the best advertising doesn't look like advertising. It has to mirror the other content.
Right.
So advertising on Snapchat should look different from advertising on Facebook.
So that's why if you're running an ad on Snapchat and it has a bunch of graphical elements and it's shot on a red camera, it's not going to work, because people need to hit that next and be like, oh, this looks like it was filmed on a phone. Interesting. Who is this? What's this about? Oh, this is an ad.
And then one other thing is a belief that Nick and I have about the world that most people think is wrong, but we really believe this passionately, is you hear all the time that influencer marketing is dead. Influencer marketing hasn't even started yet.
I love when people
Nick
tell me
and
that.
I have a perspective on this. Like, we're building a lot of our careers on that belief. And it's just crazy when people say that, because influencer marketing, there's really not a lot of infrastructure right now. And we're going to look back on right now almost like when
it's
people...
like a land grab.
It's a land grab, and it's still like inning 2 right now.
100%.
I mean, I think people say influencer marketing is dead
because they want it to be
because
dead.
they want it to be dead because
don't have their
they just
share
don't
of
understand it, right? Like people traditionally think influencer marketing is, oh, I'm gonna go pay Sarah $500 for an Instagram post, or oh, I'm gonna go pay Cosette $300 an Instagram post, and that's it. That's the end of influencer marketing. But what they forget is all the side of data and, you know, putting paid media behind that and actually leveraging. Like at Hint, we really leveraged your brand, right? I mean, we took your page, your ad, your video, and pushed it out to millions of people. I think your video has like almost 4 million views now. And so many people responded in such a positive way. Yeah. It was probably one of the most successful videos we ever ran at Hint.
Yeah, and people don't realize too that there's so much more to being a creator, to being an influencer. A lot of people don't even know that I was making videos for Hint because it was mainly for Facebook, Snapchat, and it was a different type of brand integration where it's not someone saying, "Hey, here's money, mention me in a video." I mean, I pride myself in integrating brands in a way that makes sense and it's not jarring. But this was a new way for me to explore a different medium as a, I hate the word influencer, but influencer, because I was making a piece of content that it wasn't being posted on my personal channels per se, but it was using one of my smaller channels, which is Facebook, and being pushed to millions of people through paid advertising. So what a lot of people don't think is that paid advertising piece, which is so huge. And we're seeing agencies, we're seeing companies start to get it. And that's why it is so dumb when people say influencer marketing is dead, because, oh my goodness, the companies are just now getting it. And the people who are getting it are winning. And a kind of like peek behind the curtain for my YouTube viewers who are listening. Recently this past year, I did a year-long brand campaign with Intel. And it was really appealing to me because they are in every computer. Intel processors, memory, their parts are in MacBooks, they're in Dell computers, they're in Razer computers, they're in all these computers that I really wanted to review and explore this year. So it made so much sense. Yes, let's sign up for a year. Let's have deliverables, videos on YouTube, Instagram, and it's going to help me also test out all these laptops that I want to do. But they took it a step further. They weren't saying, hey, agency, we want you to just get a bunch of influencers and slap the Intel label on it. But it's very interesting. If you go back and see those videos on my channel now, they also did paid advertising. So they basically put normal YouTube videos in front of people as pre-rolls on YouTube. And it's, their laptop reviews. It's a fun video of me saying, hey, I'm going to teach you how to do a hyperlapse. And, this laptop is going to be at the center of it, but it was also informational. And they were saying that they were getting a really good response because they were putting a YouTube video in front of a YouTube video. So people actually, instead of just skip, were like, oh, what is this?
This is native to the platform.
It's native to the platform. Exactly. And so it's funny because a lot of people are like, oh, wow, you got like 1 million views, 2 million views on that laptop review. What was so special about that? And I'm like, well, it initially got 90,000 views, but then they put paid advertising behind it and it went like crazy. And what people don't realize as well, sorry, I'm talking y'all's ear off. You should be talking. But what people don't realize as well with YouTube advertising is you pay when the viewer has viewed it more than like 5 seconds. So you pay, 10 seconds. So you don't pay for the people who are just skip, I didn't see it. I'm sure there's a fancy word for it, but you're paying for that impression, right? And
cost per completed view.
Exactly. And so there's so much more to this. And that's why I'm like, guys,
I remember, I think one of the first brands that I saw to do that was Tide, where they took a bunch of the prankster YouTubers like Andrew Hales.
Is that when the eating Tide Pods started?
That's a good question, actually. I think it was kind of around there, but they took all these prankster YouTubers and basically, they got themselves dirty with a white t-shirt, then they threw it in the wash.
I remember that.
Do you remember that? Yeah. But it was super native because it was a funny video and it was people you'd recognize.
And they used YouTubers.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is the part that just made it even
better.
Genius.
And that's what Wix has done.
Right.
Wix got Rhett and Link and iJustine and put these, and it's 2 different ways. Squarespace grabs land by doing sponsor videos, sponsored podcasts with everyone. And Wix goes the paid media route where they sit down, they film a fancy video. It's not on iJustine's channel, but they will put it as a pre-roll on their YouTube channel. And so sometimes that's good for YouTubers as well, because if they already have a lot of sponsorships on their channel, this is a way for their videos to not even touch their main channel, but they're being seen as an ad. Oh, well, that's exciting. That's cool. So there's so much opportunity, know? And so what else
that's
is
without
there,
even getting into like taking audience data of different influencers, segmenting that out, and then either building products for that or finding brands specific to certain demographics of your audience. You might have a few 100,000 people on YouTube, but you might find out that a quarter of them might resonate better with one brand over another. And eventually you can get to a point where you're now segmenting audiences and doing ads or doing videos specifically for that.
Yeah, 2 things I want to say, and these are just some lessons I've learned about media, technology, and advertising. The first one is that whenever you have a new medium, this is true throughout history, whenever you have a new medium that emerges, on that new medium, what we do is we borrow the content of the old medium. So I'll give you a couple examples. A lot of the first television shows were just two people talking like a radio show, but it took us a while, many years, to realize what is a television show? What does this new medium actually allow us to do that's different? Also, go back to the 1990s. What were the advertisements that did really well? Even early 2000s, they were banner ads. What are banner ads? Banner ads are newspaper side ads that go on television, and only now are we beginning to discover and unlock what an internet advertisement actually looks like. Now, the question is, and this is something I think about all the time, how can I be at the frontier of these technological shifts and actually understand what's going on? So what would most people say? Like, if you want to learn about advertising, what should you do? Most people would say, okay, I'm going to go get an MBA. I could go read something. I'm going to go consume something. Now, that's actually the wrong answer. If you want to be at the frontier, Chris Dixon, who's an investor at Andreessen Horowitz, when he looked at technology, what he does is he looks at what are all the nerds doing? What are the hobbyists doing? Because what they do on the weekends is what everybody else will be doing in 10 years. Same thing. If you want to learn any new cutting edge technology, what you do is you follow the people just like Nick. You follow the practitioners who are in the trenches. Their hands are dirty. They're busy exploring all these things. And part of what so much of me and Nick's friendship is me talking to Nick, getting these insights out of him, and then the two of us coming together and sharing Nick, who's on the frontier, his ideas with the world.
I told you David's the smartest person I've ever met.
Well, and something I want to get to in that, you are very smart, but you also know how to communicate and break down ideas. And
yeah, I always say my best ideas or conversations come out through when David and I are just chatting.
That's amazing.
Like we in San Francisco, last time David was in San Francisco, we went to a diner at 3 a.m. We went to Mel's Diner. This is at literally 3 a.m.
The best stories come out at a start like this.
We had just had a super burrito, this massive burrito. I look at Nick and I go, I'm in the mood for a double cheeseburger. Yeah. So we walk across the street, we go to a diner, we get milkshakes and a cheeseburger.
I love it.
And so David has this app called Otter, which basically records everything you say and turns it and transcribes it into English and separates it out by who's talking. So you can see when David's talking, you can see when I'm talking.
Wow.
And so we record all of our conversations.
We really record everything we say.
And we transcribe them just casually.
Wow.
Just as a normal practice. And so so we did that. And then the next day, I'm just reading through some of it, and I'm like, oh my God, this is some really, really good stuff. And then I realized my best stuff comes out when I'm just talking to David.
That's funny.
And then, that turned into a tweet storm, which did really well. Mm-hmm. David came over. We turned it into an article. That blew up.
Really?
I mean...
What article was it?
Just thousands and thousands of impressions and readers. So many people have reached out. Yeah, it was called the Customer Acquisition Pricing Parade. It's on David's website.
Plug the website.
Perell.com. Perell.com.
There you go.
And no, but really, that article was explosive. I mean, just insane.
What was the article about?
The secret sauce.
The article was about how basically what's happening is, if you look at what's happening in Silicon Valley in the venture ecosystem, is money is going to two places in terms of venture capital dollars that are being raised. One is relevant for this conversation. One is irrelevant, but it's actually super interesting. So I'll start with the one that's totally irrelevant to what we're talking about, but it's actually fascinating. If you think about it, who are the people who have really benefited from a lot of the growth in Silicon Valley? It's not people who work in tech. It is San Francisco landlords, because there's so much venture capital that is being funneled into this ecosystem that they're driving up housing values, and San Francisco landlords are doing so well. Now, that's not what we talked about in this article. What's also happening is 40 cents of every dollar raised in venture capital money is being shuffled to Facebook and Google and being spent on advertising. So Nick and I look at each other. We're like, that's ridiculous. That's unsustainable. These companies are spending so much money on advertising, and they're having to raise more and more. And it's
and are they keeping these people?
We don't know. Question. And it's like this hyper competitive market, and all the money, really all the surplus, is going to Facebook and Google, not to these companies. So Nick and I called this the Customer Acquisition Pricing Parade. Where do you want to explain the parade idea?
Yeah, I mean the the Warren Buffett idea?
Yeah.
So Warren Buffett basically put this in his words and said, if you're in a sea of people, right, and you're all trying to look at the front, if the person in front of you stands on his tippy toes to get 2 inches higher to see what's above, then you're gonna stand on your tippy toes, and then the person behind you, and now everybody's screwed again,
Right?
Because
so
you're
now
in a
everyone's on
worse
their
off
tippy toes,
position,
working harder, and nobody can see any better.
right? And you just,
And so
I mean,
that's relevant because all these people are standing on their tippy toes, so to speak. Everyone is funding more and more and more and more and more money into paid media. And what Nick and I are doing is we're looking at each other saying, wait, you can actually use media well, get a lot of organic impressions for free, and not have to deal with these things. Then we also came up with another idea that you want to talk about industries to audiences.
yeah. So the idea was, if you take what the brands I love, for example, SoulCycle, Away, Glossier, Hint, right? All these people are going after the same exact customer, right? Like SoulCycle, if you have an Away bag, there's a good chance you go to SoulCycle, you might buy Glossier, drink Hint, go to Pete's Coffee, whatever. There's this thought that David and I have that the future of holding companies and companies that incubate these brands are going to formulate companies and brands around the same audience rather than deciding, okay, we're going to be a VC firm or a holding company for food and bev, right? Because today that's what it is, right? Johnson & Johnson, SC Johnson, etc. They're all focused on verticals rather than let's find our audience and build around them so that we can spend once to acquire the customer and get the customer data.
Right.
And then upsell and cross-sell them to all the other brands that we have.
Right. And now whenever you hear somebody make a claim that something has changed in the world, you have to say, okay, what shifted in the world to make this true? And so let's answer that. So if you think about how did you used to buy a water, what you would do is you'd go into, say, CVS, Walgreens, and you would every single time be like this new customer going in, looking at a brand and whatnot. And look, you had companies like Old Spice, Procter & Gamble. They had amazing brand retention, but now we've moved into this much more subscription economy where once you acquire, exactly, the first time that you acquire a customer, that is when marketing is really expensive, but actually reselling to existing customers is much cheaper in terms of customer acquisition. And so because of that, the subscription model is taking off. And so as a result, for customer acquisition costs to go down, you have this kind of like prototype consumer in terms of what do they like, how do they think, how do they dress, who do they want to be. And what you do is you understand their needs, you understand who they are, and then you take those audiences and you give them products that they want. Now, something else shifted where it became a lot easier to make products at scale. So if you go back to
Shout
1950,
out Alibaba.
Yeah, exactly, right? But like if you go back to basically 20th century in America, one of the biggest shifts was America basically invented the ability to manufacture at scale. That's what Ford did in the early 20th century. And then you have like this boost of like Toyota and basically all these supply chains, which happened in America and then eventually got shipped off abroad. And now we have Alibaba. So the barriers to entry for manufacturing went from very high to zero. And so as a result, products aren't a form of differentiation anymore. The differentiation is with audiences. And that's why we built this thesis. So things really structurally changed in the world that allowed Nick and I to identify this and then come up with this thesis.
Right. Oof. Amen.
Yeah.
Boom.
Boom. Boom. So with that, I have a question or a thought that I feel like we should ideate around because I feel like all of our minds are kind of in the same place.
Yeah.
And where I find myself as a professional creator, a professional influencer, is I've reached this point where you can't scale one human. Keep hitting this wall, right? So I found this audience that resonates with me and it's awesome. It's great. I have so many ideas in my head. I never run out of ideas. I run out of time to execute them. And there's this thing where, just like you're saying, individuals are becoming their own media companies. They can become their own tech companies. But the problem is scaling humans and scaling creatives. And I had an interesting conversation very briefly with Nilay from The Verge. And he sounded so excited to really, tap into more of the YouTube community, because them at The Verge, they're underneath Vox Media. They know how to scale. They know how to scale.
Vox,
yeah, shout out to Vox. They're awesome. They know how to scale content because they have funding. They have these bigger holding companies that have resources. And so I'm thinking, oh my gosh, like this next frontier is so exciting, but it's all about how do individual creators who are creatives first understand and know how to put structure around them. And a good example of that is Kylie Jenner. She isn't just famous. Yeah, she's hella famous, but she built a $1 billion company off of the backs of maybe 10 to 15 employees. So Kylie Jenner, she has so many verticals, right? She's not selling out of makeup just because she's posting it on her Instagram, but she has a few people, you know, I'm sure working remotely who are running Instagram ads, who are running Twitter ads because her face is familiar. Oh, wow. You know, that resonates with people. So the thing that I want to ideate around and kind of explore is you're having these influencers and creators really come into their prime, and it's awesome. And there's maybe like a 1-year window to go for it and scale before people lose attention, you know? So when people reach that, like, what is the next step and how, you know, how do you see that coming to fruition for individuals? Because, you know, I've been doing this for professionally almost 3 years. Wow. But I've been making videos
since high school, right?
Yeah, since forever. And just now am I realizing, okay, you know what? I do not need to be crouched over at my computer editing every single detail of this creative to feel fulfilled. Mm-hmm. I feel like there is so much more to do. I want to do more. I want to think 2 years out in the future, but I can't think like a chief operator because I'm stuck in today as a creative. What sort of things do you want
to achieve that right now you can't?
So many things. I mean, I want to do more videos. And as your hobby becomes your job, you are bogged down by certain admin tasks that you could have never imagined. People don't realize how much time I spend on just writing concepts for brands to approve before I even film the video. There's stuff where, you know, with tech, when you do tech videos, yeah, it might only take 2 to 3 videos to film that video, but you don't see the 6 hours it takes to fiddle around with it and make it work, you know? And so there's so much to the process where the bigger your numbers, the more opportunities you get, the slower the process becomes because now it's your job, right? So there's so many things, you know. It's like maybe the educational side of things. Yeah. I would love to lean more into like individual mentorships and products and stuff like that. So go.
Sarah, you said something really interesting, and this gets back to what we were talking about influencers and companies. Now, if you built a direct-to-consumer brand and you didn't make Sarah write those scripts and those proposals, Sarah would be much happier to work with you. And if you could build into your organizational culture that you don't make influencers do that, and you have such good relationships with people like Sarah that they don't have to do that, influencers would be knocking at your door. And that's like a really good example of where companies are sort of taking their old way of thinking. And I understand that they're risk adverse. I get it. But someone like Nick would come along and say, nope, you don't need to do that, and would attract really good influencers and pay them at a lower price because influencers don't want to do that as a result.
Yeah, I mean, I think, that's 100% true, which is why I think I have a good relationship with influencers, because it's more like friendships that turn into business. But it's interesting what you were saying, because in my head, I see it like almost as a double-edged sword. Like on one hand, it's, you know, you have to hire people. Well, first of all, you're much more ahead because you know that you have to hire people. A lot of people don't get to the point where they realize they need to hire someone, or they need an intern, or they need a full-time editor, or they need someone to talk to brands for them, or they need someone to manage their email. But at the same time, I also feel like you doing the work, and maybe I'm biased because at Hint, there wasn't the brand approvals and all that. It was just, we just gave it to you. But it's just so much more authentic Whereas I've worked with influencers who've had agents that stay super involved and, you know, they have writers or they have people who write their concepts and they just don't turn out the same. So it's a really interesting like double-edged sword there.
Right.
But from a macro standpoint, I completely agree. I think there's almost like there's definitely a lack of education for what it takes or what it is to be a creator. Right? Like people who are watching this video probably think that you wake up whenever you want, you film a YouTube video, you know, you edit it, you think of a clickbait title and then it goes up and that's it. Right. And you just magically gain all these fans, but they didn't see the 30 minutes of setup before this, or they're not going to see Christina editing this later, or, you know, and
they don't see the 10 years that it took to get to this point. And I think people get so not offended, but they get appalled when they hear what influencers are getting paid. Well, totally. Go see what people are still paying for TV ads and you'll be appalled at that, you know? And people don't realize what's baked into that price is not just the content, but it's the distribution. You are paying for both things. And that is something that is still very new, right? So now you have like 3 different pillars within that where you're paying for the content. That person is the production company and they're making it. You're paying for the distribution because they already have a built-in audience that it probably took them 5 years at least to build up. And then on top of that, there's more education, there's more things that they did before that. And then that third pillar is now if the company or agency wants to take that extra step, well, then they can do paid advertising behind it and boost it even more. So now there's, you know, so much opportunity.
Peachy fam is valuable, yo.
And people, and so you have to understand that value, right? And
I mean, the one thing that we talked about a lot in Toronto last week. We were in Toronto last week.
Cool.
We talked, I think, for 5 hours one night about brands today that want to be successful now needed to have started building community 24 months ago. And what you have done and what other influencers who are worth paying have done, you guys have put in that time of, you know, building that community.
Because it didn't start as a product. Right. It started as a passion, you know? And so it's like, how do you find that as a company?
Yeah. I mean, I think even before we became friends, every time I would tweet you, there was always a response, always a like, always some engagement, which, I mean, that takes time.
What do you think it is about influencers that people are particularly upset by? Because I just look at this and I'm like, there's this beautiful thing called markets and economies. And if someone is willing to pay, this stuff has a magical way of taking care of each other.
Well, it's the same, and I would love to hear y'all's thoughts on this. It's the same thing with when maybe it's because they see themselves in you, and maybe if they're not getting it, that's upsetting for some reason, if they're an aspiring creator.
I agree with that.
Okay, guys, we have this like Word doc. I haven't looked at it once, but maybe I should.
I just looked at it, and I saw the SARA section. I saw my section was empty because I didn't put anything in it. And then I scroll down and I see David, and I'm like, of course David pasted an essay.
Man, David went so many good ideas. Yes. So I like this. What's the role of friends if you're an entrepreneur?
Oh, I love that one.
When you're an entrepreneur or a creative, you need feedback from friends. Nobody is responsible for your growth and learning except you. Surrounding yourself with the right friends is the best way to improve your crazy and navigate our hazy future.
Yeah. So I think about this a lot, and I think this is super, super important for any creative or any entrepreneur. And the problem is nobody's talking about this. Friends, when you are a normal person, are fine and like lovely. When you're an entrepreneur or creative and you work alone, they are absolutely imperative and crucial to your success or failure, will rest on the quality of your friendships. Now, that's a really strong thing to say, so let me talk about why. What your friends do is, if they're good friends, they're the people giving you feedback and critique and helping you improve. And we live in a world where when you're an entrepreneur, basically what you're doing is sort of taking risk on the future. And what you're saying is there's a market inefficiency in some way, shape, or form. I sense an opportunity. I'm going to go build for a potential future that exists in my head that I believe will exist in the future. That's what investing is. That's what entrepreneurship is. Basically taking risk based off of a belief about the future. Now, the world is really beginning to change quickly, and the way that the economy looks in 10 years will look very different from the way it looks now. So what I think of when I think of what do my friends do is I try to build friendships that have a level of honesty that would really rub most people the wrong way. Also, most people think that you shouldn't have structure in your friend groups and that friends should just be this thing where you sort of see people when you want to see them. I say no way. I actually rented a house in upstate New York first weekend of January, and I hosted an annual review retreat. Basically, it was a group of 7 buddies, and what we did was we all came together to write and reflect on 2018 and reorient for 2019. So what do? Everyone was put.
That seems something that like Tim Ferriss would do.
Yeah. I mean,
David Perell.
So what we did was like everyone went on a hot seat for 30 minutes and you presented your biggest problem for the first 10 minutes. Then for the next 10 minutes, you were just pounded with questions. And then for the last 10 minutes, you got advice and you weren't allowed to respond. But what ends up happening is people then come together to figure out how the individuals can be better, which when you're an entrepreneur, who you are as a person is very, very much aligned with who you are as a business. But then also we're like cartographers mapping out the future, coming together to figure out where is this world going and trying to map, conquer, and tackle this new frontier that we're moving into.
I agree.
Friends, right? Am I right, guys?
Friends.
So right.
Friends. Something, I'm gonna shift a corner, turn a corner. I can't talk. Turn a corner. That's the right way to say it. I recently had an epiphany on my whole theory on college. And this is something that is always in my head. If you don't know, listener, I am a college dropout. I went to school for electrical engineering, computer science for 3.5 years. And it affected my life in so many ways that I have so many passionate beliefs about college. And I've always said pretty much the same thing that a lot of people say. And it's, if you don't need to be an engineer, a lawyer, or a doctor, there's literally no point in college, right? And so when you think about those things, or maybe even computer science, you know, those are really, you start thinking about hard and soft skills. And those are hard skills. You learn how to code. You learn how to cut open a body. You learn the law of law. You know, that's a lot of words you got to put in your brain. And outside of that, it's like, there's no point. You can just go and experience the world, right? However, I'm starting to think what I actually got out from college. And the most frustrating thing was the concrete facts and how they were not linking to anything in reality. We were learning computer science and I was learning how to put asterisks in a pyramid. And I was like, how am I going to build an app? We're not even using C++ or Swift. We are using like a language that has nothing to do with anything. And I understand you have to learn, you know, basics in order to get where you want to be. But my frustration was with that, and the only meaningful thing I got out of college was the discussions I had with other students. It was, you know, trying to understand a professor and their viewpoint. And it was really putting myself in an environment that I wasn't used to. It was with other people. And it was like learning how to navigate this real world. It was exposing me to different beliefs, you know, different people coming from different backgrounds. And it was just learning and how to be like that person, not the vanilla person I was in high school in my bubble, but really learning how to talk to people, form opinions, seeing, you know, being empathetic to other situations. Exactly. And college can actually be a really good place for that. Yeah. And so I'm going back to, and I think this has something to do with, you can talk about this, David, a lot. It goes back to the things that actually helped me with what I'm doing now. And I will say, as much as I hated writing papers, being able to express my thoughts in a concise way has impacted everything I've done in my life, from writing emails to writing video treatments. Debating someone about something has helped me today. So now I'm like, oh my gosh, is it only worthy to go to college if it's like a psychology degree or like an econ degree or a debate degree or something where you actually are going to practice these skills that traverse all mediums, you know? So that's recently what I've been thinking about. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is, you know, it's interesting. And I don't think you should pay $40K a year for any degree, but yeah.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of what you said in there, and I just want to be really skeptical and just careful, really, of saying that there's no blanket prescriptions, and I still think that most people should go to college, but college is very, very, very multifaceted, okay? There are some schools that cost $60,000 a year. There are also some community colleges that are virtually free.
Yeah.
We both call them college, and the price matters. The price that you pay for a university education really matters. But right now, we have 44 million people in this country who are in student debt, and collectively, their student debt adds up to more than $1.5 trillion
and
with a T.
And you're entering your adult world with all of this baggage, which
it's
is
also the
bad.
only form of debt you can never get rid of.
Exactly. So with that said, I think that we should just be smart with talking about what kinds of college matter. And also, one thing that's really great is there's a lot of new systems that are beginning to emerge, a lot of new companies that are beginning to tackle these problems. One of my closest friends is working with some liberal arts schools, building a network to basically connect courses or universities, liberal arts colleges, their curriculums with companies in the real world to make sure that those two things are aligned and to boost job connection between students and these companies. Then there's Lambda School. I interviewed the founder of Lambda School, and what they do is they train people in computer science. You don't pay anything, and you only end up paying back to Lambda School after you've been hired. So what we're beginning to see is a lot of new alternatives, a lot of new market-based initiatives to a lot of these problems that I'm really excited about. But the most important thing I'm saying here is there's a lot of talk like don't go to college, do go to college. And it's really, really, really important for people to be discerning in terms of how much are they paying, knowing that student debt is going to be something that is going to probably impact them for the next 10 to 20 years. Yeah. And then, like you said, being smart with what you actually study in college, because I do think it's important to have a skill that you can communicate well to employers so that you can be sure that if you do invest money, and we forget about 4 years of our lives to make sure that once you leave, you have a job. But with that said, this is a really dire situation, and hundreds and hundreds of especially mid-tier liberal arts colleges are going to be really struggling, and many are going to go out of business.
Good, because they're treating it like a business, so they should go out of business, which is the problem, right? I mean, Nick, you didn't go to college, right?
Yeah, I didn't go to college.
Skipped it.
I didn't go to college at all. My mom quickly realized that I just could not sit in a classroom and learn.
Yeah.
Hey, man.
David knows this too.
You wouldn't have lasted a day.
I would not have lasted a day. But again, like, you know, people ask me, well, you didn't go to college. Do you think people should go to college? And I say, I don't know, because it's all self-awareness, right? It's like David went to college. He did really well. I didn't go to college. I probably would not have done well either. I also just like, it was really scary for me, the idea of going to college and sitting for 2 years and learning about Greek history or like whatever, or just writing
stuff
essays.
That's not relevant.
Yeah, because I knew what I wanted to do was in business and in marketing.
And see, a lot of people don't have that. A lot of people don't know what they want to do.
Right.
So
and college is a great
like
place to discover that.
Yeah.
But I also was really proactive about making sure I'm always learning.
Right.
Right. Like a lot of the things that I know today are because they're just self-taught.
What do you think you've done to always be learning?
I mean, I've surrounded myself. My mom always says the 5 people you surround yourself with is the person you're going to become. So I always keep really, really good company. Yeah.
Friends.
Yeah. I don't necessarily have like that Sunday brunch crew or like the let's go out on Friday night crew. I just have a lot of really smart friends and a lot of friends that I think I can always learn from. I never think I'm smarter than any of my friends, because if I do, then I'm hanging out with the wrong person.
Friends are so crucial.
Yeah. Like David and I could hang out probably 24/7, and it's, I mean, we do.
You still be learning, right?
But yeah, just I mean, you have to be so proactive. I mean, really, college gives you a degree, right? Like you said, if you're not an engineer, or engineer is even kind of on the fence, but if you're not a doctor or a lawyer, your college degree is really there to get you your first job, right? And once you get your first job,
and your network of people,
exactly,
so you better make sure it's worth it.
Exactly. And and the network is really important. We should touch on that after this.
Yeah.
But if you're like, how do I say this? If you can't get a first job out of college, then you had no reason for the last 4 years.
Because you have to be proactive in what you're doing.
Exactly.
Because I would go to college, I would sit in the back and I would edit videos. Right. I would literally be in the back of my computer science class and either be sleeping because I was editing all, night long, or I was doing work on my computer. And so the moment I realized, I am literally getting nothing out of this experience, that's when I was like, it's time to leave. And I think people thrive in different situations. So if you are the social butterfly who is really like thirsty for knowledge and people and that environment of college, then more power to you. Again, don't do it for $200K. But there are options. And I think that's why I bring up college so much in my stuff, because I know there's like young people listening to me, and just know that you have options. So many people when they're juniors in high school are so scared to ask questions. They just go with the flow. And you're expected to make one of the biggest decisions of your life when you are 17 years old. Yeah. Which is insane. And no one sits you down in a lecture and teach you about debt and teach you about what the difference is between a community, a state, and a private school.
Right.
They just tell you how to ace your AP test or your SAT to get into college.
Right.
And so I think it's just, guys, ask questions, Google stuff, talk to your parents about it.
Yeah.
And if your parents don't understand, then don't talk to your parents about it. Because some parents are still on the wave of, it only costs me $2,000 to go to school every year. I don't understand why, they lived a different time, so they might not understand.
Yeah, and again, like, it is, this degree literally gets you your first job, and then it's irrelevant, right? Like, after your first job, when you go for your second job or your third job, it's all predicated on what you did before.
Right.
And I mean, I've interviewed so many people right out of college, building a team, and there's just so many things that lack.
Yeah.
Right? Like, whether it's people skills, whether it's like, the ambitiousness, whatever it is, there's so many things that lack. But I just think, regardless of whether or not you go to college, you always have to just be observing and learning and networking and talking to people.
Right.
Because if you don't innovate like a company, you die.
Right. And if you're having trouble figuring out like, how do I feel motivated to learn? Find something you love to do. Right. And then you are going to be a sponge for information. The world is
so cool.
I know it is, right?
The world is so cool, and it's all
but
available to you.
Where kids, most people will think that's wrong is because they're like, okay, I have to be a doctor. But damn, I hate learning about biology.
Yeah. Which is
just,
you're going to be miserable for the rest of your life. Yeah. And that's a big question too, and I'd love for y'all to chime in, is it's a very now question. How do you find your passion? And for me, what I always say is there was not a moment in middle school or high school or college where I was not seeking out so many different things and then putting myself in those environments and working in those environments. So when I was obsessed with basketball, I was refereeing basketball. When I was obsessed with guitar and music, I was giving guitar lessons. I was going to studio sessions with my church who was recording an album. And I was really trying to figure out, I was throwing myself in these environments. And the moment it became stale after 6 months, I was like, oh, interesting. next. It's time for the next thing, right?
Right.
Throwing myself into computer science, throwing myself into a electronics job outside of my college. I thought that I was going to build amps and pedals and guitar stuff. And that's why I literally picked an electrical engineering degree. And then I got a job in an electronics shop, and I was starting to fix these things and solder these things. And I was like, this sucks. I don't care about this. And that's next. You know, people are on their phones, on their computers, not doing anything and wondering when they're going to find their passion.
I feel like for me, I did a really good job of just trying to meet as many people as possible. I also realized super early on that if I could grow my Twitter, I get access to a lot of people. And with that access, I get experiences and access to
Twitter
different
is
places.
the plug.
100%.
I mean, I vouch so hard for that.
Oh my God, so much. Like, I've met everyone from YouTubers to celebrities to artist managers to
we're friends.
I mean, David and I met on Twitter through the DMs. There's like putting yourself out there and networking and just being able to say, I don't care how crazy this looks or what other people think. I just want to go try it and see if I like it. Or, you know what? It's 11 p.m. It's kind of late. My friend invited me to the music studio. Screw it. I'm going to sleep tomorrow. I'm just going to go. Yeah. And just like putting yourself in experiences, that's, I think, what really helps you find your passion.
Yeah.
And just trying everything. Like,
try everything.
I mean,
do
when I was
everything.
young, my mom always said, just don't say
time.
no. Just say yes. Just
and people
do it.
don't realize, and guys, I get it because I was in every AP class. I was playing basketball for my high school team. I was playing guitar in my church band. I get it. You feel busy. Yeah. And that is the time that you're busy. However, during that time, you have a free roof over your head, hopefully. You have food being put on your table. If your mom or dad are awesome human beings and are doing your laundry, you have that. There's so many responsibilities that if you're lucky enough, you won't have. And it's so surprising because that is when you do have time.
Yeah.
You don't realize it because you're studying for your AP test. But guys, you have time to... Okay, hustle culture, sleeping is important. But when you're in high school and college, you have time to maybe only sleep 6 hours, you know? And that's when it's like you live life and you try things. And
Exactly.
So I'm just going to take a step back here. I'm not sure that find your passion, the way that's phrased is really misleading. Mm-hmm. And I think it takes a huge toll on society. When people talk about finding your passion, it's as if it's like going on an Easter egg hunt. Right. And you're going to like walk around the house, then go through the backyard, and you're going to find an Easter egg if you just spend enough time doing it.
Right.
And then it's like your passion is
not
just
gonna be any work
they're
at
waiting
all.
for you, and it's this beautiful thing. You have to go create and discover your passion.
Yeah.
Very, very, very different. And finding your passion also doesn't talk about the reality that you need to make money, and you will feel much more fulfilled serving society, serving others. And what you want to do is you want to find this beautiful synthesis between how you can serve the world and how the world can serve you. And when we talk about finding your passion, it's like this, I'm going to sit back and walk around, and then this magical thing is going to descend on me, and it's going to be my passage.
And it's almost always about what other people or what the world's going to do for you.
Exactly.
Right.
And like, if I look at this group, if I look at the two of you, what I admire about both of you is both of you have been through this kind of idea maze. Okay, I'm going to go discover this. You know, this is like closer to my passion, but it's not really my passion. Then I'm going to go discover this. It's like closer to my passion. And I would actually argue both of you haven't even found your passion yet. Both of you are still trying to discover what that is. You're trying to make that passion, and you're trying to find the intersection between how you can serve the world in a way where other people pay you and other people give you opportunities that are really cool and exciting, but also they then give you the resources so that you can put a roof over your head and feed yourself and eventually raise the next generation of kids. And when we talk about finding your passion, we don't talk about these super important things. Like, this requires work, and it requires time, and it's brutal, and it's difficult.
That's the thing
it's
that
back
people
to the
don't say.
10,000 hours, right?
Yeah.
Like, so many people they just expect it.
Yeah.
Right? They expect it. But
and what they're expecting is so bold.
Which is
too.
why right when they get out of college, they get smacked in the face.
Yeah.
Right? Because reality hits them.
Yeah.
Oh, I have a phone bill. I have insurance. I need to eat. I need to pay rent.
Yeah.
But it's like...
Yeah, and I will say, and it, you know, the world is so crazy, right? We're just arguing about everything on Twitter and blah, blah, blah. And if you have an internet connection and if you have a roof over your head, you are more privileged. Like everyone loves to talk about privilege, right? Amongst ourselves. But I'm like, guys, if we're all arguing on Twitter and you have a phone and you have that interconnection, like we're pretty much all on this equal plane of privilege that you can't even like explain to a kid in Africa, you know?
Right.
So it's like not... And people love to be like ashamed of privilege too. And so it's almost like lean in, like you, again, having an internet connection, possibilities are endless.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, what I would just say
and
it's
so powerful. Like
all of us live in this really beautiful moment of transition, and there is so much opportunity in the world right now and so many ways to create an impact that really matters. And what I would say is, what I'm trying to do is find the ways that I can make an impact and in a way that benefits me, in a way that benefits the people I love, and in a way that makes the world a slightly better place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 100%. 100p. Okay, one more round of thought before we wrap things up. This has been good, guys. Oh snap. It's been so good. Okay, this is interesting. Oh, okay, maybe two more. We'll see. Do you guys want to keep this going? Two more. This is something that I was recently tweeting about because I think about serendipity a lot. But David, you put how to maximize serendipity, and I think this goes back to what we were talking about earlier. But when I point back to things in my life,
define it.
Do what?
Define serendipity.
Yes, define. Well, you define serendipity.
It's basically luck that you didn't expect.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I also think what's different about serendipity and luck is you have to like create that moment, right? And so, me too. Because
dude, you're so good at this.
Because like
you're so good at this.
So much love going around, guys. Because any moment I think about in my life where something happened so crazy that it shifted my life was all serendipity, but half of it was me getting to that place, was me shaking that hand, was me saying yes to something first, and then everything fell into place, right? And so I think what people miss so much is, again, it goes back to, all right, well, people talk about luck and serendipity. There's a lot of that involved. So I'm going to sit here and I'm going to wait for serendipity to punch me in the face. But that's not how serendipity works. Serendipity works by getting on that plane, going to that conference that you might not be able to afford, but you know a lot of good people are going to be there and paths are going to cross. And you're going to be in the same room with people that you would never be in the same room of. And, you're tweeting people before and you're emailing people before. And you're like, it's just like so many things lead up to serendipity. So, Nick, you talk about it. So how has serendipity played a role in who you are today and the opportunities that you have in your job?
Yeah, my entire career, I think. This is going to sound like a total brag, but I feel like it's almost crazy when I take a step back and just think about it. It's insane, right? Like when I was 15, I saw that Facebook was becoming like a real thing in social media. And so my cousin started a TV show.
By the way, how old are you?
I'm 22.
Okay.
And
yeah.
you...
So for all the people who are like, oh my God, Nick is the smartest person ever. This is crazy. And then you second guessed him because he's 22. Shame on you. Because a lot of people do the age thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so true. So when I was 16, my cousin had a TV show on the Indian network of Sony, which is much bigger in India than it is here. So none of my white friends knew about it. Or really any friends in America.
Yeah.
But then I said, hey, I will build your Facebook page. Can I do that? She said, sure. So I took the ask. She said yes. I built the Facebook page. It got to, let's say, 100,000 likes. Then she decided I'm going to put on an event in LA. We were there, and there was a model who was closing the runway with a fashion show. She was the last person. It's called the Showstopper. And the person who was taking care of her that night said, I can't deal with this. I'm out. So I just said, is it cool if I go in and do that? So then I decided to be her handler for the night, which originally I was just going to be sitting downstairs. It was actually at it was a rented out club. So I was 16. I thought it would be cool to go to LA for this event, sit with all the VIPs all night. But instead I said, you know what? I'm going to go be her handler for the night. I'm going to hold her phone. I'm going to get her champagne when she wants. If she needs water, I'll go down and get it. And then by the end of the night, she said...
I'm sure she was beautiful too.
She
so
was gorgeous.
Not a bad
Absolutely
job for you.
Yeah. Not a bad job for a 16-year-old. But at the end of the night, she said, I want to introduce you to my manager because I think you should come with me on every road show. And I was like, but I'm only 16. She was like, okay, just talk to her and see what happens.
Yeah.
So I talked to her. Her name is Anjula Acharya, who she's a partner. Currently now she's a partner at Trinity Ventures. She was also this girl's manager. And so, okay, I talked to her. That was the end of it. That weekend, I knew she was hosting an event in San Francisco called TyCon. She was hosting the closing reception. And my cousin was also, she had a booth at that conference. So I said, can I come up? And she said, sure, here's your plane ticket. So I go up. The event goes Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Anjula's hosting the Sunday night reception. On Sunday night, I figure out how to sneak backstage at the reception.
This is so you.
No, I love stories like this because I want people to be able to visualize what serendipity looks like.
Right.
And it's this.
Exactly.
This is so you.
So I figure out how to sneak backstage. She's currently out on stage talking. Backstage is this other comedian named Rajiv Satyal, who we just start jamming. We quickly exchange phone numbers, and we become friends.
Wow.
Later, I learned Rajiv toured the world with Russell Peters, which came into play way later because I got to meet Russell thanks to Rajiv that night. But anyways, Anjula comes back, and I say, oh my God, Anjula, you're here? I didn't know you were here. And so we start talking again about social media. Next thing you know, 2 weeks later, I'm gearing up because I'm going to India for 2 weeks with my sister. And I get an email from Anjula to Pitbull's manager, and it says, hey, Charles, hope you've been well. This is Nick. You guys need to be working together. He's a social media guru.
Game changer.
Wow.
Right away, Charles loops in the publicist, and boom, passwords shared. We just start working together.
Wow.
So that was one.
Pitbull.
That was like my first one, right? Where it's like I'm 16 working with Pitbull on social media. Then the next one was I went to go work at an ad tech company in San Francisco that was just launching. And that all happened because I decided to message this guy on his personal Facebook. I said, hey, I'm a big fan. I'm about to go to college. I really want to come intern. I'll do it for free. Next day, he flies me up, stay there for a month as an intern. And then he says, why don't you go to a couple college classes, go to the senior class of like the senior year marketing classes and see what you take away there versus what you've done in the last month. Mm-hmm. In the last month that I was there, I had acquired a company for $500,000 in Brazil, which was a Facebook marketing partner, and just done a bunch of crazy stuff. So I go to the class. They're talking about how breakthrough it is that FedEx was responding to customers on Twitter as customer service, which I didn't think was that innovative because we were running paid media ads for some of the largest Fortune 100 brands.
Right.
Right?
Wow.
I mean, it's crazy because it's like I've realized luck isn't the traditional sense of luck that we grow up reading about in kids' books.
Because lucky is you find a $20 bill on the ground.
Right.
So that's why I feel like it's so important to define luck versus serendipity.
100%.
Because
one is a Disney movie and one is being an entrepreneur in reality.
Yeah.
And I've just realized that luck is just the intersection of hard work and patience.
Yeah.
Right? If you are always putting the work in, opportunities will arise.
Well, it's like the freaking golfer guy who said, the harder I work, the luckier I get.
Exactly.
So.
And I mean, today I'm working for Gary Vaynerchuk, which is just insane. Mm-hmm. And again, it's like, the harder you work, the luckier you get.
Well, also, there's something really important in what you just said, which is that when people tell their stories, they make it seem like, oh, I did this, and then naturally it led to this, and then it led to this, boom, boom, boom. And people hear that, they're like, I don't have that plan.
Yeah.
How am I going to do this?
It literally starts with
one step at a time,
and one decision.
and everyone leads you to a door that you didn't even. it's not even a door that was closed. It's a door you didn't even know existed.
Yeah.
Right.
And then they go and show you this door, and then you sort of wander over here. And people who tell their life stories, they're like, yep, it was a straight line to the top.
Right.
Yeah.
Yo, life is zigging and zagging and going down, and then you go up, and then you go down and up, and then you circle around, and like that's what you do. You just pounce on an opportunity, and then you go identify the next thing. And there's just so much more opportunity in the world than people realize.
And it's all about just reaching out and asking, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you don't ask, you're never gonna get it.
Well, right. So on that point, so I started a podcast. So I think it's really important. Everyone should have a thing. Okay. Right. So basically what I call is one really fun way to just be slightly more creative is just to come up with fun name for things. So what I do is I call this like build a serendipity vehicle, right? It's like has this fun little image in your head, but everyone should have like this thing. And so what I did was I started a podcast. So a thing is like a piece of content, something that you make that can compound over time. You make it once and you can sort of share it with different people. So I started a podcast because I was living in New York City. I was interning when I was in college. This was after my sophomore year. And I'd come up to New York and I'd go try to meet people. No one wanted to hang out with me. I was like, world, come on, give me some help. So what I did was I started interviewing people. And so I was doing written interviews at the time. And I would reach out to just awesome people I'd want to meet, and they would say, no, I don't have time for coffee with you. Then I'd say, hey, can I interview you? And they're like, here's a 3-hour block of time. Let's hang. So I'm in college being like, ooh, I can sort of interview people and then meet some awesome people and whatnot. And then I was working here. This was November 2016, and I started a podcast. So I interviewed a couple people. My third guest was a guy named Massimo Paolucci, and I will thank this guy for the rest of my life. Massimo Paolucci is a philosopher at the Graduate School, which is a graduate school in New York City on 35th and 5th, and he runs the Stoicism department. So I interview him, and after the interview, I go, yo, Massimo, can you help me out? And introductions for the podcast just help me out so much. So I'm like, hey, can you introduce me to someone? And he goes, yeah, I could introduce you to this person. Hadn't heard of him. This person, hadn't heard of him. And then he stops, puts his hands on the table and goes, Neil deGrasse Tyson is my best friend.
Wow.
The most famous scientist in the world. And he goes, you should interview him. Long story short, as fate would have it, the stars aligned and I interviewed him. 7th episode on my small little North Star podcast.
Dude, you're so lucky.
Crazy. And I interview him on the day his book comes out.
Wow.
That book sold more copies than any other nonfiction book in America in 2017, to the best of my knowledge. That day he was on the Today Show in the morning. This was book launch day. Today Show in the morning, New York Times before me, North Star podcast, episode 7, Wall Street Journal, and then Colbert Report at night. Wow. And that is what serendipity looks like.
Oh my gosh. Insane. Okay, I'm going to tell my serendipity story really quick too, because I think it's so important to connect the dots, and it starts in the most random thing. Random, you just don't know. So when, this will be the last thing. When I was still in college, but this was when I was starting to be like, there's no way that I'm going to survive this college thing. And it's really when I was like doing videos and I was working with a production company, trying to get some side jobs and stuff. And I was introduced to this creative world, and I was using Adobe products at the time. And I saw, Adobe Max. Adobe has their own creative conference. That sounds like something I should go to. I'm in Texas. It's in LA. I'm a broke college kid. How am I going to get there? I researched it a little bit, and the last year they gave out $500 360 cameras. So I was like, they gift really huge gifts. I can just sell this and stay at a friend's house in LA, and that will cover my ticket. Right. So I was like, okay, I have no money, but please, there better be a good gift that they give everyone. And I really was like, I need to be a sponge. I need to learn more about not just video, but I really want to go outside of my medium and explore things. So my first breakout session was a book publishing session, which is like, that sounds so random. Sarah, you're not a writer. Like, what?
What are you doing there?
Exactly. But I'm obsessed with coffee table books. Like, I love them. I have so many of them. And one day I was like, you know what? It would be really cool to make a coffee table book about creators. I love sharing the creative process.
That's a good idea.
I want to do that one day. So I went to a book publishing class, and it was only 30 or 40 people in the session, and I really connected with the presenter, Becky, and Becky wasn't just fun, relatable, and knowledgeable of the book publishing business, but she started talking about this thing that she just got called the Adobe Creative Residency. Instantly, my head went away from book publishing and was like, I'm getting the Adobe residency next year. She had just secured it 3 months ago. There was still 7 months to go, but instantly my brain was like, this is an out from college. This is 100% an out, and I'm going to get it. So I went up to Becky. She lived in Texas, and I was like, girl, I'm from Texas, Dallas represent. She's from Austin. And again, having your thing. My thing was Creative Spaces TV. Right. I was going and interviewing creatives in their space, showed off their studio. College, yeah. College. And again, I only had 3,000 subscribers, but when you go and make a really cool video on someone, they're going to share it. They're going to get stoked about it. That's exciting.
That's huge. That's huge right there.
And so I go up to her. Oh my God, you're so amazing and fun. I loved all the GIFs in your presentation. Guess what? I'm from Texas. I have this series. Here's my card. I would love to film you. I'll drive down to Austin and we'll make it happen.
Wow.
And so that night I got a tweet from her, Becky, because she kept my card and she knew my handle. Right. She connected me to the Adobe community manager and said the community manager and I had actually just moved to Nashville, but I knew I was always going back to Texas. Mm-hmm. The community manager tweeted that night, who is in Nashville who's a videographer. Wow. Becky literally saw that tweet, got out my card, and tagged me in that tweet with the Adobe community manager. Community manager goes, oh, hey, I would love to get drinks. Go get drinks with her. And then she was like, hey, we do this thing called a creative jam. We need a videographer to make a recap video. I'm like, I live off of recap videos. I have so many recap videos. And she's like, listen, we can't pay you a lot, but we'd love for you to come and just like do this for us. It was literally a $300 job, but I was like, I don't care. You're the Adobe community manager. Let's make this happen. Mm-hmm. So Nashville Creative Jam, make the best video ever. It's so good. Mm-hmm. You know, way worth more $300, but I knew the connections were worth more. Yeah. I stayed up till midnight talking to the 3 Adobe employees that were evangelists that were involved with the creative residency. Yeah. I didn't know at the time. We had the best conversations. They got to know me. And so it's just that like serendipity working, right? So, and then I went to work with, I filmed Becky for the Creative Space TV. I put out the episode. It was great. I kept in touch with the community manager, and I knew sharing the creative process. That was a big part of the creative residency. So I started a thing called Every Days on my blog. I blogged on Tumblr during that day.
Wow, I didn't even know that.
So I had
what a scoop.
I had 200 days in a row on my Tumblr of sharing my creative process, going out with my camera, taking pictures, writing word posts, making videos that I would have never made. And then that's when I became consistent on YouTube. And every single thing I did pointed to make me a good creative resident application. And so once the applications opened up, I was like, all right, it's my time. And it was so funny because low-key community manager and also Becky shot me a text and was like, you should maybe apply for the residency. And I played it cool. I was like, that's a great idea. I think I'm going to do that. But they didn't know low-key in the back of my head for the past 7 months, I was literally creating my entire life to get the Adobe Creative Residency.
That is so funny because that's literally the same thing with the Forbes under 30 thing.
Yeah. Which congrats, by the way.
30 under 30.
And that's
Nik the Man Sharma.
Yeah.
But it's so similar because it's like I saw that when I was 20 and I was like, I want to get on that.
Yeah.
And then things kept going and going and going. And then I met this woman, Claire O'Connor, who's the former editor at Forbes, who's now an editor at Bumble. Yeah. And she was like, oh, you should apply and I'll totally, say something good.
Yeah.
And then boom.
Yeah, exactly.
Sarah, what is the thread that ties your work together? And the things that you are really excited about? The creative process.
It was...
I feel like community too.
And community, yeah. And what... a lot of people, I was so aggressively trying to get this residency, but at the same time, I was making a video that I was stoked about, and I was making a video that was reaching beyond my YouTube audience. So that is what led to the same time me getting the residency, making a viral video and going from 4,000 subscribers to 100,000 in 1 month.
I remember that.
Yeah. So all of that happened at one time. My entire life shifted because of the previous year and the previous 4 years of trying to build up my YouTube channel. And yeah, I would hands down say creative process. I'm obsessed with it.
What about it?
I I wish I could be everything. I love that my medium is video. I'm really passionate about video, and I love that I can put images to music. That's what started it, because I loved music. But I am also obsessed with design. I'm obsessed with people who can write well. I'm obsessed with people who can go on stage and perform. I'm obsessed with musicians. And so if I can provide a lens to everyone's creative process, then I am good, because I know people can get, I had this on my YouTube channel from the get-go, is my goal is to inspire, educate, and entertain. And if I can do those three things, then like I'm good.
Yeah, when I was in college, I used to watch these videos by this hip hop sort of R&B guy named John Bellion, and what he would do is he would,
he's huge now.
He's huge.
Yeah.
But back then no one knew about him.
Yeah.
And so we used to just hang out at nights in college. We used to watch basically these making up videos.
Yeah.
And what he would do is he would document his creative process, and he would show you all the process of making a song. And a couple weeks ago, I went with one of my friends, Neil, who plays guitar, and he's just got this beautiful, soulful voice. And he calls me up at like 10 o'clock on a Friday night. He goes, "Yo, Perell, let's go make a song." And I'm like, okay. So we go to Bushwick, which is where a lot of the artists in New York live. And we go to this studio, like 5th floor, all the way in the corner with this Japanese painter. And the three of us just make a song. And we start at 10 o'clock. We end at 3 a.m. And what was so cool about that experience was I got to just watch the creative process.
Because it's so inspiring,
spend my life absorbed in the pain and the agony and the stress of creativity. But just watching something emerge and watching something go from 0 to 100, from nothing to something in 5 hours, it's a beautiful, very human thing. And so I totally vibe with you when you talk about
luckily
creativity.
we're seeing it more, right? It's about like sharing your secrets online. When in 2013 and 2014, when I started doing that, it was all about what was in 50 Cent's refrigerator on MTV Cribs instead of how we made a song. And I looked at that and I saw that as a need, because I was like, oh, I don't care about that. I care about this. There has to be other people out there who care about that. So people can go back on my channel in 2014 and see a very shy Sarah talking about the difference between ISO, aperture, and shutter speed on my camera, because I feel like, oh, if I could learn it from my friend who knows everything, well, then the internet deserves to know it. I can share that knowledge even though I learned it last week. And I think those are the best teachers, are the people who are in it and they still understand what it's like to not know that knowledge, because then they know how to teach it. Exactly.
Well, also what you said about learning on the internet is super powerful. I was talking to a 19-year-old kid today, one of my readers from Western Ireland, and he went on Discord threads and in Reddit channels and through different networking meetups on the internet, and then just by watching YouTube videos. And he built a fusion reactor in his dad's garage, all on his own. He's a 19-year-old kid.
What?
And I'm just so inspired by that.
Oh my gosh.
How cool is that?
Opportunities are
endless.
crazy, especially today.
Yeah.
It's insane.
And when he was in New York, we met up, and now I'm helping him out with a couple things. Just
helping him with some fusion reactors.
I'm helping him out apply for something. But yeah, he's from Western Ireland, a town of a couple thousand people, and he built a fusion reactor in his dad's garage.
Wow.
And is one of the youngest people in history ever to do this.
That is insane.
That's
Holy
crazy.
cow. Guys, we got into so much good stuff.
That was so fun.
That was good.
That was so fun. First of all, where should people, it'll be in the show notes below, but some people just don't care. They need to listen to it. Where can they find you on the internet?
I'm at David_Perell on Twitter, Perell.com on my website, PERELL.com. Have a podcast called the North Star Podcast.
I have an episode. I'll link that as well.
Please do. And then every Monday, I send out an email newsletter called the Monday Musings, which is basically a collection of the coolest things I learn every week. So please subscribe. And if you have any questions, shoot me an email. You can find my email address. I just love helping people out.
Cool.
David reads like 7 hours a day. So his newsletter on Mondays is just loaded.
Oh my gosh,
with
wait.
the coolest stuff ever.
Tell us one book that someone needs to read, a recent find.
Yeah, this book called Creation. It's by a guy named Steve Grand, and he invented a video game that basically creates this artificial life. And this book it came out in 2000. It really influenced Jeff Bezos and a lot of what he's been able to build with Amazon. And the book, asks, what is life? And dives into that question. What does it mean for something to be alive? And it's philosophical, technological, practical. It's a book about systems, and boy, is it excellent.
Awesome. Nick?
I am at Mr. Sharma on Twitter, Mr. Sharma.
I will forever know you as that.
At Mr.
Because
Sharma.
just
Mr.
Twitter.
Sharma.
Or now you can text me at 213-214-3165.
What is this, Nick?
And you can just text me and I'll text you back.
Wow.
That's my phone number.
15 to 25,000 people listen to this.
It's great. Text me and ask me questions. If you need an intro, if you have an idea, if you want to jam on something. Yeah. It's my phone number.
Well, you heard it here first, guys, and I think there's so much good stuff, but I feel like if you're a listener out there, you need to do one of two things or maybe a mix. One, you might need to put your head down and just work, or two, you might need to get on that plane and go to that conference or shake that person's hand or not ask them to go to coffee, but maybe create with them. I think serendipity is so powerful. And just
I have a post called How to Maximize Serendipity, linked to it in the show notes. But
Perfect.
If you read that, I think it will help. And if you have any questions, please email me.
Heck yeah. And review this podcast, That Creative Life, on Apple Podcasts.
Please review this podcast.
Please review.
Give me
Come
a
on.
5 stars.
Do it. I mean, this was such a fire episode. It really helps out on Apple Podcasts. Make sure you're subscribed so you have those episodes.
It's crazy how much reviews actually help.
Yeah.
Because I've seen running from somebody else's podcast how much, I mean, that podcast went from brand new to top 20 because people were just reviewing.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's insane. So please leave a review.
It does matter. And if you're new around here, I have a YouTube channel, but you probably know that. But all the links are in the description below, the show notes below. Every Monday, new episode of the podcast. It's fun. Yeah, thanks for making this happen. You know,
I'm going straight back to the office.
Straight back to the office. I love it. Well, I'm straight back to editing some SpawnCon. But guys, thank you so much for being on.
Thank you.
Until next time, guys. I really don't have a sign off for this, but
peace.
Stay peachy. Keep creating. Okay. See you next Monday. Okay, bye.